Hey guys, this video is another viewer request. This is Doctor Strange, and I have to say that this video was a real journey for me. As you know, I like to use the Ultimate Alliance of Evil as kind of a measuring stick of the boss rift capability of a character. And from the beginning of making this video to the end, I was actually able to cut over 2 minutes off of my time on that rift with this character because of the playstyle changes I picked up over that time. So I hope this is able to help some of you guys. I was actually surprised at how much damage Doctor Strange is capable of doing when you play him correctly. So the role I think Doctor Strange fills is very similar to Scarlet Witch's role in that it's a utility healer, but he is very, very different. He's almost a polar opposite from Scarlet Witch. He is very much a utility strategist. And I've kind of put a pros and cons list together for him here. As pros, he has good crowd control, totally opposite of Scarlet Witch. He has a nice ranged stagger, one of the better staggers in the game from a ranged basic. He has the best heal in the game, which isn't very hard to pull off, and he has very decent damage potential with the correct ISO loadout, and he has very good EP management. So that's all his pros. The cons for this character: he has very limited range on his CC and an extremely limited range for his DPS. His skills have animation lock or channel time, so you have to play very strategically. He can't heal himself, and he is better in a co-op setting because of his utility. So let's look at his attacks real quick before we get into his skills. His light attack is a medium range bolt. It has a fairly slow attack speed, but it does pretty decent damage. Sometimes I find it better to only use this 2 at a time instead of pulling off the full 3-hit combo, just because that third hit often keeps me in a place just a little bit longer than I want to be there. His heavy attack has a long range, but I find that it is kind of deceptive because while it has the ability of hitting at a long range, it's really more useful as a short to medium range attack because of the slow rate of travel that this attack has. Has excellent stagger damage for a ranged basic attack. His jump attack, this looks kind of like 3 magical circular saw blades that he flings out here as he descends out of the air. Has fairly short range and not anything amazing, but it's still worth piping these out whenever you're relocating and landing to attack an enemy. Okay, let's take a look at Doctor Strange's skills. His first skill is Flames of the Faultine. It's a fairly short range channeled skill, has a 2-second channel. It is an ethereal flame damage skill, and it has the fire synergy tag as well. The skill will add fire to any ally attacks that have the fire ability attribute, and if you land the full length of this channel, it will hit the enemy 12 times. This is Doctor Strange's damage, period. I can't really stress that enough. Even though his light attack and his heavy attack work quite well, this was the skill that I found made the difference in doing significant damage or not doing significant damage. And it is very much where a lot of the play strategy comes in for Strange, because this has such a short range and it has the 2-second channel. It's locking you in place. It's very important not to use this at a time when it's going to get you killed, but at the same time, the more often you can use this, the quicker things die. So it's very much finding that balance and knowing when the opportunities are right to use this. The obvious safe times are when enemies are paralyzed, frozen, or bound, and also when you avoid a boss attack, and you can immediately use this as they're doing their attack. Or then, of course, on a stunned or staggered boss, it's also a great time to use it. Doctor Strange's second skill is Crimson Bands of Sidorak. This has the bind and melee damage tags and no synergy tag. With that being the case, we're not going to be able to gear for this skill, but it is still a great crowd control ability. I look at this as Doctor Strange's opener attack. If you use this before flames or before bolts of Balthak, it significantly increases the damage because it turns all your hits into critical hits, and then that is also doing that for your teammates. So this is probably one of his better skills, especially in a co-op setting, and this is a very good crowd control skill. It is able to bind elites with stagger bars, and also able to bind bosses at times. I find that when bosses have the increased susceptibility to stagger damage, that's also a good time to try to inflict a crowd control on them, such as when Ronan lifts his hammer for the big AoE ground slam. I find that the bind is more likely to stick during that time. Doctor Strange's third skill is Winds of Watum. This is his heal skill, so it doesn't have any tags. I do want you to be aware the video clips I'm using are from the Gauntlet Stage Condition Terminal, and there's reduced healing there, so the numbers are about half what you would see in story mode or in a regular rift. The skill is a 2-second channel. It heals 5 times during the channel, and each tick heals for 3% of your target's health. And put that in perspective, it's roughly the same amount of healing that you would get from standing in Scarlet Witch's heal field for 14 seconds. The downside of the skill is it's a channel, so it's going to leave you open to attack while you're frozen in place. And also the skill must be aimed at your allies, and the moving allies are not necessarily easy to hit. The other downside of this skill is that Doctor Strange is not able to heal himself. One little thing I will say about this is in a co-op setting, I found that it is possible to, especially during a boss stagger, to hit multiple allies, usually for 2 full channels. If you got your teammates pounding on a boss during his stagger or stun state, it's a great time to go ahead and heal them up, and 2 full channels of this will restore about a third of their health bar. So I do consider Doctor Strange a legitimate healer, and he is able to heal enough to actually make a difference. Doctor Strange's fourth skill is Bolts of Balthak. It's an ethereal damage tag with a beam synergy tag. This is not your typical beam skill. This thing rotates in a 360-degree circle, and because of that, the only thing I really find that it's good for is following up behind Crimson Bands of Sidorak. When you have a big screen full of enemies, it's good for chunking those guys out as a follow-up skill. One thing to make note of is that the enemy that is directly in front or behind you when you begin casting the skill will be hit twice. Once at the beginning of the casting of the skill, and then as it rotates around, they'll be hit a second time as it ends. Okay, let's take a look at Doctor Strange's available synergies. First, let's discuss Flame of the Faultine for just a moment, and the fact that it is a channeled skill. I find because of it being a 2-second channeled skill, there is a nice window of opportunity for your teammates to perform synergy attacks, and even if those teammates are AI, they seem to have enough intelligence to pipe out the synergizing attacks during that time without encouragement from the ZR button. In fact, I get better results when I do not force the synergy there. So this is a fire tagged skill, which means it can combine with area or barrage for an elemental barrage, which is a good synergy. My favorite is to combine with either bash, charge, or slam for the catalyst synergy. That is a nice chunk of damage, and the one that I would actually recommend for Doctor Strange. Your other options are to combine with an explosive tag for Mega Blast or to combine with a whirlwind for Coalesce. We'll next look at Strange's beam synergies because that's his only other synergy tag. His beam skill is a little odd because it rotates, and because of the way his beam rotates, it's really not good for much more than trash clear. So the options are to combine that with an area, barrage, safeguard, or whirlwind tagged attack. All of those result in a reflect, but I do not recommend combining with the safeguard because it's really lacking results. Even though those are all the same synergy, the area and duration varies greatly depending on the skill you're combining with. The other option that you have is, or one other option, is combining with another beam for Resonant Blast. I do not recommend that at all with Doctor Strange. The fact that his beam rotates makes it very difficult for the beams to collide to produce the synergy, and oftentimes you never even get the synergy with ZR with that skill. And then your last option is to combine your beam with an explosive tagged skill for a Mega Blast, and that is actually a perfectly viable option for clearing trash and works quite well. Okay, let's talk about Doctor Strange's ISO. And before I talk about his ISO, though, I want to talk about the change that happened with his playstyle that resulted in minutes coming off of his Rift runtimes for me. I started out playing Doctor Strange using his heavy attack to stagger bosses. I would likely maintain that in a co-op style of play, especially if I was looking to heal. But playing Strange solo, what worked out to be much, much better, and I'm talking taking me from 8 minutes plus down to 5 minutes and 43 seconds, and I could easily take some more time off of that if I wanted to, was to focus on getting the Flames of the Fall team and going straight after the boss's health bar, ignoring the stagger mechanic and just counter punching with that Flames of the Fall team. It took him from the worst character in the game in my eyes to a actually quite powerful character. So I can't really explain how surprised I was at the difference that made, but the ISO loadout reflects that play style. So if you're going to go for the stagger first, you might want to use a different loadout. So for Rifts, what I was using was fire attribute damage times 2, because most of his damage was coming from Flames of the Fall team. Ethereal crit times 2, that impacts pretty much his entire kit damage-wise. Percent damage when below 50% EP times 2. He has it very easy to control EP, so that I was able to take advantage of the damage from that ISO very easily, and it was very effective. Then I used damage resistance and percent health regen every 10 seconds. I did have similar results when I used more ethereal critical hit in place of that fire damage, but I'd rather have the variety on here, and plus the fire damage did edge it out. Other good options would be ethereal damage, percent damage to enemies, and critical hit. For story mode, I would get rid of those damage when below 50% EP, because crossing waypoints and such refills your EP. I would replace those with a decreased number of attacks needed to inflict a status, and damage to enemies affected by bind or ethereal damage. For advanced gauntlets, I would add damage resist as needed. Probably about 45% I think strikes a good balance if you're going for 4 stars and not really doing a push. And pretty much replace whatever you want to damage wise in there with those damage resist. It's not going to make a huge difference one way or the other. At the end of the day, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually think Doctor Strange is in an okay place. He's capable of much more damage than I originally thought, more utility. He is very difficult to play well. I have to say that. He is one of the harder characters in this game to be effective with. and he is also very dependent upon ISO to make him effective. So those things do kind of hold him back and maybe make him a character you would want to play later on. But at the end of the day, I really do like him. Hope you guys have a good day, and I will talk to you next time.